practice in Aurangabad and you see a lot of patients from villages. So what are the common challenges that you face when a patient comes from a low resource setting?
The low resource can be what? It can be resources of money, it could be resources of literacy, it can be resources of access to healthcare. What has really worked for us is peer group. I believe that education comes second. Motivation comes first. So I feel the biggest motivator is peer group and a kind of a support system that tells them that this is a real story. I think you have hit the nail on the head, and that we compensate by education what we lack in material resources. We have to believe, if you are the one who's providing education, you have to believe that every person can be educated. First, total illiteracy, it is not possible. You should have at least numero literacy. So actually it's funny because we run numero literacy classes in Udaan.
Hi everyone, welcome to the Genuine Podcast. I'm Dr. Anushri Mehta, a D-Genius doctor, and today we are going to discuss a very important topic about type 1 diabetes in a low resource setting. To discuss this, we have our mentor, Dr. Archana Sarda, who is the founder of Udaan and a pioneer of type 1 diabetes management in India. Welcome, ma'am.
Thank you, Anushri.
So, ma'am, you practice in Aurangabad and you see a lot of patients from villages. So what are the common challenges that you face when a patient comes from a low resource setting?
Very good question, Anushri, and I think let's start from the beginning. The challenge in a low resource area. The low resource can be what? It can be resources of money, it could be resources of literacy, it can be resources of access to healthcare. So all three resources, that does not always have to be about money. So we have people living with type 1 diabetes today who come from villages which are so remote that the nearest doctor is a day away, or at least 60-70, for them a day away, because they have to walk to the road, then take a rickshaw or a cycle or a ghoda gadi or something like that. So first challenge in low resource setting is diagnosis itself. For every person, every child we get, and that too we get in decay. By the time they reach us because of lack of diagnosis, misdiagnosis, finally coming to a city, and it's already decay. But for every child coming to us, there are at least 4 to 5 who couldn't make it. They probably didn't know why they passed away, but this was because of type 1 diabetes. So that's the first challenge. Second challenge is once they're discharged from decay, they've already spent a lot of money. And now there it is, the therapy. And it's an ongoing lifelong therapy and a monthly expenditure of glucometer strips and insulin. And that becomes very overwhelming for the family. And the third is actually self-efficacy, because they are either illiterate or they have so many social myths. They feel we can't handle this. And there is no person in that area where they live who is living with type 1 diabetes. So they feel it's only me. And they're not aware, they've never read about it. They often say nobody in the world has it, it's only us. So all these things together are there also in upper higher resource setting, but it gets very highlighted and unsupported in low resource setting.
So how do you help them deal with this initial shock? Because we have tried and we can help some, but we find it very challenging for a lot of patients.
It is true, it is very challenging, and especially in low resource setting, it becomes even more challenging because they're not always open to new ideas. They have so many thoughts which are fixed in their mind, and it's usually related to society. Right? So medical advice is something they're willing to accept from a doctor, but it is the social stigma, pressure, the advice that comes from people, and their fear of future. What is it that they're not able to accept? One is that it's going to be lifelong. Second, they're not able to accept that it's injectable. Third thing which they're not able to accept is, will they get married? Will they be able to earn money? All the normal things in life. So I think what we do, and which has worked very well for us in the last 25 years in all the villages, it's more than 1,500 children who are coming from very low resource setting. What has really worked for us is peer group. So when they come in, the first people they meet, we don't talk about insulin first. We talk about, hello, I am a person living with type 1 diabetes since last 10 years and I have become a nutritionist. Or I'm a mother of a child with type 1 diabetes and my child is now going to college. So even before we talk about what is diabetes, how to take insulin, so I believe that education comes second. Motivation comes first, because once they are motivated, they are receptive to receive education. So we learned this the hard way. Earlier we used to tell them about insulin, what is diabetes. Then we realized they're not listening. Their mind is switched off. So I feel the biggest motivator is peer group and a kind of a support system that tells them that this is a real story. Because if we talk about only the film stars, earlier we used to say, so and so is a famous film star, he has it. They said, it's okay. I come from a village. I'm not the same as that film star. They can't relate to that example.
They need an example from a low resource setting itself. Because
Absolutely.
even when you, that's
So they need real life heroes. They say, okay, I come from a village next to yours. I come from a family that has as less money and literacy as yours. So when this happens, so we often plant. Now so we have a very good group. We have a very good team which is actually living with type 1 diabetes or mothers of type 1 diabetes. Children with type 1 diabetes. But even before that, before I had this group, I used to plant other kids. So when I knew you were there, I would call another one and plant them in the OPD so that they have a casual, informal conversation outside, which was planned but felt casual. And that we found worked really wonders.
I think that was wonderful, very insightful, and I think a lot of our viewers can take a lot of points from that, and I've definitely taken a few points. Now we know that for patients who live with type 1 diabetes, education is very important, and you've yourself mentioned that the literacy rates are low, especially if the child is small, the parents don't even know how to read or write. So even managing a log is a challenge. So how do you educate them? What are the tools that you use so that they can manage their diabetes better?
Absolutely. I think you have hit the nail on the head, and that is what is going to make a difference. So we often say that in Udan, in rural areas, we compensate by education what we lack in material resources. So we may not have CGMS, we may not have pumps, we may not have fancy apps, but we compensate by giving them very empowering education. So how do we give this education? First of all, we have to believe. If you are the one who's providing education, you have to believe that every person can be educated. Somewhere we have to put the onus on ourselves. It is up to us to find a solution. Person could be illiterate, person could be a slow learner, I have children with ADHD, I have children with Down syndrome, and yet we have found ways which are tailor-made to be able to give them structured diabetes education. Now, what could these ways be? First, total illiteracy, it is not possible. You should have at least numeroliteracy. So actually, it's funny because we run numeroliteracy classes in Udan. So when a parent does not know even the numbers, we cannot function because at least the glucometer readings.
Yes.
So we actually teach them, and it is a requisite that you have to learn the numbers. So at least that happens. But even otherwise, another requisite that has helped us in education is a smartphone. Okay, we are in Maharashtra and we do have a very good internet range everywhere, or the phone is, I think, a pan-India available everywhere. So what we have found that as we give insulin and strips, etc., we insist that everyone has a smartphone. If not, I run a phone bank. And we take, because people do, upgrade their models, so they rent their phone. So we think of it as an essential item. And how has that helped? Because then we have videos, we have audios, we have songs, we have dance, we have skits. And there's so many things that the parents can just send us a voice message. Then they can take a picture of the glucometer and send us the readings. So these are different ways that the communication can be established in the lowest resource also, till they are then capable. So the education has many levels. For example, carb counting. Today, a child in the remotest of areas in a village is able to count carbs. Why? Because first they started with prescriptive. right? Which was very prescription based. Then they started with recognizing the macros. Once they could recognize the macros, then they started with balancing. Once they could balance, then the basic carb counting and then advanced. So depending on their capability, there's a spectrum. So it has to be tailor made, but it can be done, and there are a lot of tools we use for that.
That was wonderful, and yeah, you're right. Tailor making the education for the children, and making, so you're actually making use of technology
Oh yes.
in a low resource setting, which is yeah,
True, Anushri. Just think. So why do we think technology is for the smart and the city people? Actually, it helps most in the remotest of area. I tell you, the smartphone has transformed our care in remote areas because they are able to, like you imagine, I have people who are nomadic, who are carrying their child from farm to farm with their bakri, with the goat and all that everywhere. But they are able to take care because they're storing their insulin in a pot, they're checking their sugar, they're able to call us, and they know how to calculate in a prescriptive dose. So those are things that really helps. A simple phone can change lives.
who would have thought? So very inspiring, ma'am, really. So I think I'll ask the last question.
Sure.
Is that how do you help them deal with social stigma? Because I think it is 10 times more in a low resource setting than it is in upper classes, or even middle class for that matter.
I think that's a major challenge, and social stigma we have learned the hard way is it's not a doctor who can do this, it is the community.
Okay.
Right? And once you have champions, so all the champions we see are in our community are from the ground, right? So if a mother of a 7-year-old sees a 17-year-old going to college, riding her scooty, dancing away, taking insulin in public, she says, oh, this girl is looking smart, my daughter can do it as well.
Right.
So the stigma, it comes when you see empowered people. When we share, look, these people have become engineers, these are doctors, these are farmers, these women are now working, look at how they're earning. So the stigma goes away with awareness. That is the only way. And I have a very simple principle. I tell all people living with type 1 diabetes, people stigmatize you, you become something, and that is your answer. Right? You can't tell them today, oh, type 1 diabetes is okay. They're not going to believe it.
Absolutely.
You become something. When you win a race, you climb a mountain, you come first in your class, or you are a good farmer, you grow up well, and they're like, okay, type 1 diabetes is fine. So we have so many such champions.
So you convert the type 1 diabetes as a motivator rather than something that stops them.
Absolutely.
So you convert the weakness into a strength.
See, ultimately, Anushri, you have to change the narrative, right? Situation is not going to change. Type 1 diabetes is there, insulin is there, monitoring is there, management is there, society is the same. It is the narrative in your own head. And the narrative with your community, when you change that, you suddenly start seeing things differently. And that is what empowers people living with type 1 diabetes. So could I also share one nice story?
Yes,
right?
please.
So, I mean, I have like 500 stories, but or 1,000 stories, but just one story. For example, I just want to give you an example of a girl called Manjusha. She's on my team now, but she came to me as a young girl living with type 1 diabetes with her elder sister who also had type 1 diabetes. Father is a farmer in a remote area. From a rebellious child who wouldn't take her insulin to now a postgraduate nutritionist and the nutritionist in Udan. So she has so many stories, from a beneficiary to a giver, right? So this becomes, so empowering. She tells the kids, I also was like you. I never used to take insulin. I fogged my, I fudged my logbook. But this is, look why. So it has given us hope that everyone behaves in a certain way. It's okay, accept them for that they are. But one day, never give up. They're going to come back and they're going to get empowered, and they're going to be rock stars for everyone else as well.
I think that was so inspiring, and we've had a wonderful session with ma'am. As usual, I'm having goosebumps whenever you listen to ma'am's talks or have discussions with her. That's how it is. So in conclusion, ma'am, can you give some advice to young doctors like us as to how we can empower other kids or our patients like how you do?
I think you guys are already rocking. But my advice as a senior person would be one, get your science right? Do not compromise on being updated with whatever is latest. Maybe the requirement would be very basic, but that doesn't mean that we do not know the science end to end, because that's the only time, if you are an expert, only then can you convert and simplify the matters effectively and pass it on to your patients, right? Secondly, empathy. We have to put ourselves in the shoes of people who are living with diabetes. And once you have the empathy and you have the knowledge, I think everything will automatically flow. You will find solutions. There'll be challenges. Just find a solution. With these two things, if you're armed with, I'm sure there's no way to stop your success in work.
Thank you, ma'am. That was wonderful advice. We'll wrap up our podcast here for today. Thank you.
Thank you, Anushri. It was
Thank
a pleasure
you.
being here.